Welcome into the Big Little Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. That is Andrew Greig. Week 9 is in the books. We're going to be doing winners and losers of the trade deadline, as well as the games that were played. The College Football Playoff Committee releases their first rankings tonight. We'll have that later on. But first, we're going to start with the unfortunate and gruesome injury of Jayden Daniels at the end of that Seahawks game. First thoughts here on that injury, and then maybe potentially like the decision from Dan Quinn to keep him in.
Yeah, so just first off, it's not a miracle, but it's very fortunate that it's not his throwing arm, because then it's possibly career-ending. But still, the recovery and the process that is going to be ahead of Jayden Daniels is super unfortunate, especially given the time and place of that game. I think that game was essentially over in the first half, and I understand wanting to maybe muster up some energy for the next week and take some momentum from this game into the next one with one final drive. Could be a thought process there, but I think that Dan Quinn is definitely at least a little bit at fault for having your franchise quarterback in the game with such 7 minutes remaining. It's still time on the clock, but it's at that point you're down 31 points. You're not really fighting for anything. It just doesn't really make any sense to have the future of the franchise in at that point. So I think that definitely it's super unfortunate with that. What's happening with Jayden Daniels, or what's going to happen with Jayden Daniels, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense from really anybody. What the reason why he was in the game at that point?
Yeah, I guess the half glass full viewpoint of this is the fact that it was his non-throwing arm, but that's about the only positive that you could potentially take away from this. This decision to keep him in the game didn't make sense on any front. I will recognize that. Obviously, if he doesn't get hurt, nobody's really talking about that. There might be some people online saying, why was he in at the end of the game? Something could have happened. But I don't think at all that would have been the national conversation, the game, the day after the game or anything like that. So with that being said, you punt the ball in the fourth quarter, or, at the beginning of the fourth quarter, at the 50. You're waving the white flag at that point. You're down 31-7, I believe, or 38-7 actually at that point in the game. And you've essentially said, if you're going to try to make this any sort of game, try to make a run, do some, pull off some miracle, that's not going to be in the cards because you punt this ball. And I know you're about to score and everything like that, but you essentially you need to take out your quarterback after you've waved the white flag and you haven't done everything that you could do to win up to that point. You take out your starter because you know who your starter is, and you got to protect these NFL guys from themselves too at the same point. It doesn't make sense on any front. The score, the time, the decisions made prior to it, and then who exactly Jayden Daniels is to your franchise. By all accounts, I completely respect Dan Quinn as a head coach in the National Football League, but this was one of the worst decisions I've seen in a while.
Yeah, and I don't know if a timeline has been set on how long it's going to take for him to come back, but just in general, he's been dealing with injuries this whole season. You know what Marcus Mariota looks like at this point, and it's not to say that he could have predicted the future and would have could have seen this coming at all, but it is one of those things that is just preventable. If there's going to be injury that is going to have quarterback is probably one of the positions that takes the most hits on a game-to-game basis, literally just because of the fact that they consistently have the ball in their hands on every single play, if not close to every single play. And just the fact that you're running the risk of that through putting your franchise quarterback in a meaningless game, or at least at that point, a meaningless game, just doesn't really make any sense. If they were going to go on any sort of run towards the end of the season here, obviously the Commanders are coming off an NFC Championship game appearance. That just went up in smokes. We've seen what Marcus Mariota looks like at this point in the season, and if they wanted to do anything with the rest of the season, it was going to be through Jayden Daniels. And unfortunately, that is not an option anymore. So I think that the main attributing blame is obviously going to be on Dan Quinn, because he makes the decision to let him go back out there.
Yeah, there's got to be somebody you would think that might be in his ear to say, hey, we punted on the last drive. Do we want Jayden Daniels to go back out there? He did come in with a slight reputation of not exactly always protecting himself as a player on the football field. And that's something you got to take into account. And it's a real thing. So when you run an RPO, he's going to run the ball, even though you're down 31 points and you're that close to the goal line. I would almost have never, even if I kept him in the game, risked him tucking the ball and running, because as a player, you're thinking you're going to go try to score. And that's just the simple part of it. And I don't blame Jayden Daniels whatsoever. Freak accidents happen. And this was just kind of a really odd kind of play in the way that it happened. Obviously, the injury looked awful, but sometimes that is a part of the game. It's a roll of the dice, but like that's not something you ever want a player to end up putting themselves in. And I think a lot of this conversation that we have about like injuries and stuff, it's pretty well recognized. I think that the NFL as a whole does have to protect the players, but the coaches need to make sure that they protect these guys, because there is no way, as fast as this game is, that a player is going to make a business decision more often than not. You have to make that business decision for them, and it's definitely equally beneficial for you to take him out of this football game. Nobody would have batted an eye if you took him out late in the fourth quarter in this game. There's absolutely zero consequences, nothing that you have to say to the media afterward, and you would have been A-okay, and you would have moved on for the rest of the year as a playoff hopeful that you were prior to the season starting.
Yeah, and then just to wrap it up, it was like, not only is it like you don't bat an eye if this is a regular game, but this is also Jayden Daniels that has been injured at multiple points in the season, including the very last game. Like, he didn't play that Kansas City game in the lead up to this game, so he was like questionable coming into this game. He makes the start, and then you get him for the game. Obviously, it doesn't go the way you want it to, but at that point, you have your franchise quarterback coming off two separate injuries throughout the course of the season, being out two separate times, and a game that he was literally just out for. If you kind of forfeit this game and put your backup quarterback in, you at least live to see another day. But now you not only ran the risk of like him like re-injuring what he had before, but now you run the risk of any other possible injuries, and obviously we saw it happen. So just in general, not a very smart decision, and we'll see what the Commanders look like going forward. But there's just no chance they're a playoff team at this point. So especially in the NFC, there's so many teams that are competitive in the NFC. I know there's like 8 teams with at least 5 wins, including the Bears, who are at the very bottom of that list. So the Commanders probably weren't going to make it. Would be a tough run ahead no matter what. But now without Jayden Daniels, it's impossible.
Well, week 9 is in the books, as well as the trade deadline. Trade deadline was today at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Let's go through our winners and losers. Start with the winners first, Andrew.
Yeah, so my winners for this overall week were the Bears and the Bills. Less so about the trade deadline, but more so about the way they got their wins this past week. The Bears just looked good. For at least on offense, they looked good for the majority of that game. Caleb Williams has 2 separate receptions. One goes for a touchdown. One, he's following his lead blockers all the way for like a 15-yard game, which is really awesome to see. Just in general, fun game to watch if you were Bears fans until the very end, where you thought you had control of the game. 2 minutes left, you were up by 2 touchdowns. Then the Bengals not only go on and score to make it a 1-score game, they get the onside recovery, score again, they went for 2 the first time, got that, and then made it a 6-point game, take the lead on the second touchdown. And you're thinking as a Bears fan, here we go again. Like, we didn't do enough. The defense, what's going on? All these different thoughts are running through your head. But no, Caleb Williams is able to kind of silence that whole crowd, is able to go down the field. Colston Loveland is showing up for possibly the first time this season and making a huge impact, like a 50-yard touchdown down the field when they really only need like 20 yards to get into field goal range. And the Bengals lose a heartbreaker. And so just for everything that the Bears are going to be, and if they're going to be competitive with Caleb Williams, this is a good start to that. And I think this is one of those games where you need to be able to find a way to pull it out if you're a good team. And Caleb Williams is able to drive them down the field. And then my second winner, the Bills. Anytime you're able to beat the Chiefs as a Bills fan or as a Bills player, I think it gives you a little bit more confidence that you might have a chance to do it in the regular season. I understand that they've won 5 straight against Kansas City in the regular season, so they've had that boost for years on end now, and they haven't been able to do it in the postseason. But I think that this is just an important win for the Bills mentally. If Patrick Mahomes is able to go down and get that score to win the game, or at least tie it up, I think that would have been really demoralizing if the Bills go on and lose that game. So I think the Bears and the Bills are winners coming out of this week.
Hey, every single regular season win that the Bills get over the Chiefs is and should be a confidence builder, because you're going to need to rebuild that confidence after a really, really tough playoff loss that seems to be an annual thing for them. So I like it. The Bills played well. The defense played well. So good win all around for them. The Bears, miraculous win. On the other end, the Bengals are at a very unfortunate point, because that pretty much really hurt their playoff chances. And that was a game that they stole miraculously too. So the Bears, I mean, this is awesome for them. They continue to be in the race. It's a very, very competitive and close race in the NFC. So you stay alive, you continue to do that. And that entire division kind of flipped flipped upside down after this week. So really good for the Bears. My winners, the Eagles, they were on a bye this week, but they got Jalen Phillips from the Miami Dolphins, and Howie Roseman strikes again. I think at this point it's just almost a narrative thing and it bound to happen. And this guy's playing Madden franchise where he's just using the trade simulator and making his best moves. So he's doing his thing. I think the Eagles are one of the best teams in the NFC. I think that's pretty recognized, and they got another great player on their defensive line. And then I got the Seahawks. I think with all of the Jayden Daniels injury talk, the Seahawks maybe went a little bit under the radar with how good of a win this was. Sam Darnold was perfect for the first half of this game. And he still ended with great stats, only had 3 incompletions. He had the 1 interception, but still was amazing in that first half. I think he was 14-14, 4 touchdowns. The Seahawks team looks legit. They also, I believe today, made a deal to go get Rashid Shaheed. So I think that's a nice addition. I like Shaheed. So I think overall, really good week for them. And then they've been able to take over this division. Now, I know the 49ers have been dealing with the Brock Purdy injury, among other things. And I know the Rams are really, really competitive, but the Seahawks are kind of, I believe they're in the lead for that division. You might have to correct me. I'd have to see exactly what the tiebreakers are, but so far. But I believe the Seahawks are at the top of the division, and I think that it's overall really, really good for them through the first 9 weeks of the year. Double checking me on if the Seahawks are at the top of the division. I can pull it up really, really quick because I believe
so
won
the Seahawks and Rams are tied for the division lead. They haven't played this season yet, so
yeah, right.
The Seahawks technically are at the top of the standings, but the tiebreakers haven't happened yet. Yeah. But I mean, I think those are 2 really good winners. The Seahawks, just in general, what they built this season, I don't think anybody really expected them to be as competitive as they are. And if they do have to go on the road, they are 4-0 away from Seattle this season. So I think that is at least a good omen if they do end up having to not winning that division. Super competitive. The Niners and the Rams, like you mentioned, are 2 really great teams. The Cardinals kind of bring up the rear there. But I think I'm right there with you. I think the Seahawks continue to impress. Sam Darnold's first half was absolutely amazing, and then the Eagles, Howie Roseman, like you mentioned, is just constantly like behind his desk making moves, always on that phone. So I think that Jalen Phillips, from a Dolphins fan, is a really good player. Maybe not always the most sound tackler. He's missed a couple pretty key sacks, but in general, Jalen Phillips is a really good player. He was definitely worth the 3rd round pick that they spent on him. So I think the Eagles are probably on an up going into the next week.
Yeah, I was getting the Seahawks overtime win against the Cardinals mixed up. For some reason, I had that in my mind that it was the Rams. But I think out of the journeyman QBs that have kind of had a revival of their career, Sam Darnold is the most legit one. Now, after doing it with the Vikings and the Seahawks this year, I'm really liking what I see from them. I tell you what, if they can get a home playoff game or something like that, I think that they can make some noise in the NFC playoffs. Let's go to your losers, though.
Yeah, so starting off with the Commanders, we touched on them a lot earlier, so I won't do too much else. But the Commanders just haven't looked very good all season long, primarily with Marcus Mariota at the helm, but also with Jayden Daniels. It just hasn't been clicking for them. Understand that they've been out without Terry McLaurin for majority of the season, and just in general, that offense has looked good at times and then not looked good at certain times. The defense is hit and miss as well. So just the fact that the Commander season is essentially officially over. I want to highlight as another point is being one of my losers as well. But then the Falcons, I just don't really understand what's going on with the Falcons from week to week. They were keeping themselves in that Patriots game. Drake London had just an absolutely phenomenal game, 3 touchdowns, a bunch of catches, but they just Parker Romo missed the extra point to tie it up, and it's just all downhill from there. The Patriots are able to win that game, but if you look at it, they win on Sunday Night Football against the Bills, right? Then they have the 49ers who are super beat up, the Dolphins, and the Patriots. You think those are possibly 3 games where you can at least go 2-1 out of, but then no, they fall to 0-3, and now they're sitting at 3-5, just barely in the divisional race with the Panthers and the Buccaneers very much at the forefront of that race at this point. And the Falcons are kind of in no man's land because if they don't win that division, they're just not making the playoffs. The NFC's too good this year, so dropping another game that was possibly winnable towards the end, and the Dolphins game that would just got completely out of hand with Kirk Cousins at the helm was just 2 really bad losses back to back. And if you want to count that Niners game that they kind of just didn't show up for, only scored 10 points, another kind of bad loss for the Falcons. So they find themselves at a very interesting point where they are on the cusp of not being in a playoff race at all.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much said everything about the Commanders. I think at this point, it's just as long as this doesn't derail your future, try to end this year somewhat strong. Maybe Dan Quinn comes back, maybe he doesn't. It's not going to be just because of this decision, but it'll be how they end the year. And the Falcons are the definition of a week to week in the NFL being completely different for obvious reasons. I mean, I'm looking at their schedule right now. Okay, you have the close loss to the Bucks. Get a nice win over the Vikings. That was the JJ McCarthy injury game, if I can remember correctly. And then you just get destroyed, mauled by the Panthers. And you come back with two really, really solid wins against the Commanders, and then that really, really good Monday night win over the Bills. And then you proceed to drop 3 straight. And yeah, anytime you lose a game because you missed an extra point, you're probably going to end up on our losers list. And I think it's completely valid, especially because there was some ground to be made up in that division to catch the Bucks, and they weren't able to capitalize, and the Panthers kind of were able to. So I believe they're 4-4 now. So the Panthers have been able to do their thing. They look like the most legit team as far as that can challenge the Bucks in that division. So
5-4 for the Panthers now. They
5-4 for the Panthers.
Yeah, they beat the Packers this week.
Well, yeah, and I thought they were just. Oh, yeah, I thought they had their bye. Okay, let's go into my losers. I got the Bengals this week for absolutely stealing that game and then throwing it away at the very end. I think that's one of the worst losses I've seen in a while, and that puts them in a hole as far as making the playoffs. Now, they still needed Joe Flacco just to win a handful of the games while Joe Burrow was on the sideline, and they've been competitive. They've been a good team, and I certainly still like the move to acquire Joe Flacco, and it hasn't been the offense. If the defense plays at all like it has, like Joe Burrow coming back isn't going to make any sort of difference. They need to tighten up on all parts of that defense, and it's one of those losses that leaves you speechless. I don't know what else to say. That was one of the craziest games I've seen in a while. And then the Texans, I think a QB injury that kind of went more under the radar was CJ Stroud's. I know that Texans offense hasn't been very good this year, and it wasn't really good against the Broncos. But now that you got Davis Mills in the big 2025 starting at QB for you, you're in a tough spot, and you're going to end up on the losers list. I believe they're 3-5 right now, so they're also kind of screwed.
Yeah, I really wanted to touch on the Bengals because if they weren't going to be your loser, they were going to be definitely my loser. Just in back-to-back weeks, losing absolute heartbreakers. This game, maybe a little bit less so because they had to claw and scratch their way back into this game. They were down and out with 2 minutes left in this game, and they were able to score 2 touchdowns in the dying moments of this game, and still end up losing it. But I went through just Bengals like YouTube yesterday, and I watched their like Jamar Chase and Chase Brown's interviews, like post-game interviews, and it's genuinely seems like a locker room divided at this point. It's like the offensive players aren't really talking to the defensive players. They're just like, they know what they need to do. We can play complementary football. We can turn this around, but we got to get things figured out. And like Chase Brown is essentially like, that was Jamar Chase, but then Chase Brown was essentially like, yeah, no, like he didn't say anything too much crazier than that, but he was just like, the whole interview just had such a negative connotation towards it, and it makes sense, right? They just lost in a heartbreaking fashion. The offense feels like they did enough, but he kind of emphasized the fact that they weren't perfect on offense, and that feels like what they need to be at this point with that defense. So I wanted to throw those 2 nuggets in there just because it's kind of insane what's going on with that locker room. It genuinely feels like the offense is doing enough with Joe Burrow now towards that beginning of the season or the middle of the season after they lost Joe Burrow. You're starting Jake Browning. The offense was kind of lost, but now they've come back to life with Joe Burrow, and they have the weapons to do it, but the defense can't stop anybody. Like, they gave up over 30 points in back-to-back weeks, 3 straight weeks, and 31 points to the Steelers, 39 points in the loss to the Jets, and then 47 now to the Bears. So that organization kind of just looks lost on defense, and it's unfortunate because if Joe Burrow does end up coming back towards the end of the season, like, this team could maybe make a run with the people that they have on offense, but that defense is just not absolutely atrocious all season long. So the Bengals definitely are a huge loser this week because they're kind of in a spot, kind of like the Falcons spot, where they've just dropped a bunch of games that they didn't need to, and could be very much in a playoff race. But now they sit at 3-5, and it looks a lot worse. And the Texans, obviously losing their franchise quarterback for however long, and CJ Stroud is a loss. But man, that offense just looks so bad all season long, which is unfortunate because that defense has been, for my money, it's been the best defense in the NFL this season.
The Chiefs are 5-4 after the loss to the Bills in the regular season. Tell me if you've heard that last part before. Are they still Super Bowl contenders? Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. So I think this is a funny question to raise, right? They're out of the playoff
Yeah.
picture right now, or they're at least out of one of the 7 spots in the AFC playoff race. But I don't see a world in which they don't make the playoffs. I think that's unfathomable to me. And if they make the playoffs, they're contenders. There's just no way you can count the Chiefs out and be like, oh, they're not going to win the Super Bowl, or at least make it to the Super Bowl in a world where they make it to the playoffs. Like, I understand the Bills loss. It's been a reoccurring theme at this point. I mentioned earlier that they have 5 straight losses to the Bills during the regular season, but it's a completely different story in the postseason. And right now, it feels like the Bills are their biggest competition, right? The Patriots seem legit. There's some other, the Colts have looked legit the whole season long, maybe not this past week, but in general, they have. But if you're going to count like teams in the AFC that are going to be competitive towards the end of the season, the Chiefs have to be on that list. It is unfortunate because this is the one week where Patrick Mahomes, like, who's been making an MVP case this season, looked like bad on like from a quarterback perspective, and it's not for a lack of weapons, right? Like, earlier on in the season, you could be like Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice are out, Travis Kelce is just not the same player he used to be. But this week was more on Patrick Mahomes than anything else. Like, I'm sure like not all of it was his fault, but some of it was, and I feel like this is the most attributable loss to Patrick Mahomes and the fact that they were in that game for such an extended period of time. So this wasn't a good loss, is what I'm trying to say, but they're playoff contenders in a very long-winded way.
Well, no, I actually think I agree with every point that you made there. I don't really have much to add as far as like the game itself, because it was one of those, like, you look at Josh Allen, he plays extremely well. Patrick Mahomes doesn't play so well, and they end up losing by a touchdown. It is what it is. It happens. But my big thing here is we had this conversation. This isn't on us. This is, I think, a general sports and NFL media problem. But we had this conversation at 0-2, and we need to just pump the brakes. I mean, are we going to do the same thing that we did to the Patriots? This is exactly what I said. What was it, 7 weeks ago almost now? This is exactly what I said. We kept doing this to the Patriots, and legitimately, until Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid call it quits, that's probably going to be the end. But until then, this team is going to be a team to be reckoned with in the AFC playoffs. They are the 8th seed right now. We are talking about them like they are the Ravens at 3-5, the Bengals at 3-6, like, or even the Texans, dare I say, at 3-5 as well. There's a massive drop off between the 8th and the 9th seed in the AFC playoffs right now. And if you don't think that they could catch the Jacksonville Jaguars, who just beat the Vegas Raiders in overtime, because the Raiders went for 2 essentially, because that could have been a tie, then you're out of your mind. Legitimately, I can't. I don't know if I can trust you, because I'm not. I have the Chiefs going to the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl from the preseason. I don't know if they can do that. Like, just to be straight up, I don't know if that would still be my pick. But we need to have some perspective here. This is still the Kansas City Chiefs. This is Patrick Mahomes, the best QB of this generation that we're having post Tom Brady. I think pretty easily. They're definitely going to be a team that I'm picking over a lot of these other playoff teams, and that's including some of the teams at the very top. We haven't mentioned today the Colts or the Steelers, who did just play. Colts specifically got Sauce Gardner at the trade deadline, and the Pittsburgh Steelers got a pretty good win, even though the Colts made it close at the very end there against Indianapolis. I'm still picking the Chiefs over both of them. And I like the Steelers. I'm not very high on the Colts, but I'd say they've become pretty undeniable at this point, and that should give everybody some perspective here. This Chiefs team, when it comes playoff time, they will get in. I think we're both agreeing on that. When it comes playoff time, they're probably going to be favored against any team they play.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense to me either, because the fact, like everything that you've just laid out too, right? If they're in the playoffs, if they're playing any of those teams that you mentioned, besides maybe the Bills, they're the favorites and everybody knows it. Like, if they're playing the Colts right now, who are you taking, the Colts or the Chiefs? And I can see that you can make an argument based off what's been going on this season, but in deep down in your heart, you know that like the Chiefs are at least have a 40% chance to win that game at the very least. Like, if you're a super Chiefs pessimist and you really think that they have a shot at getting bounced in one of the earlier rounds of the season, you probably give the Colts, who are probably with the Patriots right now, one of the better teams in the AFC that are not including the Bills, you give them maybe like a 60% chance to beat the Chiefs at the very best. So, long-winded way of making that analogy, but still, like, it's to say that even the best teams in the AFC like are not going to be huge favorites, if favorites at all, against a Chiefs team. So I just don't see it happening.
The Chiefs also, like, they have some teams on their schedule coming up over the next few weeks. They're on a bye this upcoming week, but after that they get the Broncos and the Colts. I mean, they could put everybody on notice if they win both those games, and we just look stupid for even having this conversation. But everybody asks it, so that's what we did. But after that, they have, obviously they have the Chargers one more time and the Broncos one more time, but they have the Raiders, Titans, and Texans. I think you pretty much, and Cowboys. I think you chalk that up to being 4 games and 4 wins. I mean, the Cowboys defense is so bad,
And
so like they're going to be able to get wins when they need to. They've got some head-to-heads still coming up, and look, I'll just come out and say it. I don't care how high anybody else is on the Colts. As long as Daniel Jones is their QB right now, I'm not going to buy it. So it is what it is, straight up. I love the move to get Sauce Gardner. I mean, they gave up a lot, actually, when I really say it out loud. But still, no, I like the Chiefs against most of the teams they still have on their schedule.
yeah, I just like also if you just read off that schedule again, like Denver, Colts, Cowboys, Texans, Chargers, Titans, Broncos again, Raiders. Like if you want to go,
Did you have it in front of you just now?
yeah, I did.
Oh, okay.
I
I
wasn't
was
doing
like,
that from memory. I
like,
was,
oh my god.
yeah, no, I don't have the Chiefs' schedule memorized. This take would probably be a little bit more like you could probably decredit a little bit more if I just memorized the Chiefs' schedule. But no, if you look at any of those teams, you just aren't thinking that like there's no game in there where you're like can't sit. You can chalk it up to a loss. You know, like even with your favorite team, sometimes you're like, oh, this is going to be a hard game. You can say that's going to be a loss, right? Like they can genuinely go like undefeated in this run of games. And they showed it last year. They went 15-1 essentially. And then like rest their starters when they had the 1 seed clinch. Like if they want to, they're going to have to want to over the next couple games just to make sure they get a good seed in the playoffs. But like they can compete with any team in the NFL, and with Patrick Mahomes, their quarterback, if he's playing the way he has shown that he can play since getting into the NFL, it's just not a question if the Chiefs are going to be good in the playoffs. It's when the playoffs come, how far can they get?
The Ravens caught a bit of a stray by me, and when talking about the Chiefs just a second ago, but they are 3-5. They got a win against the Dolphins. Lamar Jackson is back. They got the Vikings coming up this week. Are we thinking that they're going to make the playoffs? Are they also going to be able to sneak in?
Yeah, I think I maybe even go a step farther. I know that they still have the Steelers on their schedule here. I could see the Ravens winning that division still. I'm just not high on Aaron Rodgers and that Steelers team in general. I don't know. That defense looks like it can be had, and the offense is good at points. And then it's also one of those offenses that can be hit or miss. Aaron Rodgers, I think, is probably the most sackable quarterback in the NFL. Sometimes you just like crumple down like a late stage Eli Manning. So I think that the Ravens are definitely competitive in that division. They showed what they can do. Like if that defense is clicking, I understand the Dolphins aren't a world beater, but still holding them to 3 points and then also that offense, like just being able to click, lock in, and just play a good football game towards the end in the third quarter there. It shows what they're capable of. Lamar Jackson is one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL at this point. So I think that I think that they will make the playoffs for sure. I think that they have a chance of winning that division.
I think they have a chance, but I'm worried that they're a little bit too far away. I'm high on the Steelers, but I'm realistic about what I've seen from them this year. I would say that the Ravens the inside track probably is to take care of the Steelers in the 2 games that they still have left against them, one being the final game of the year. And that's how they kind of sneak in as a playoff division winner. I don't know if they could get in just simply as one of the other teams that doesn't win a division.
Yeah, I was saying that. I was making that take without like the playoff picture in front of my eyes right now. I understand that there's going to be 3 teams out of the AFC West, right? It's probably going to be Denver, the Chargers, and the Chiefs in there. So it doesn't leave much room for anybody else if there is an inside track. So I think that I probably would say that they're going to go out and win that division and make the playoffs. That's probably their way to do it, because any other way they just can't lose any more games and would probably still have to get a little bit of help.
But I will say, I mean, it's not like I've been extremely impressed with the Broncos and the Chiefs. Their record is just a little bit too far ahead of the Ravens for me to really say that. And then obviously the Chiefs are still fighting too. They're not in the playoffs right now. And like where the Jags going to be, like, I don't know. I think the Colts pretty much got that one wrapped up, at least for right now. I mean, still plenty of football left to be played. But the Ravens do have, after the Vikings, the Browns and the Jets. So if they beat the Vikings, that's a 4-game winning streak right there. And that looks, 5-game winning streak because they beat the Bears the week prior. That's pretty good. That's like a season revival already there. I think I'm looking when I'm looking at the rest of their schedule. When exactly is Joe Burrow coming back? That is super important because they got the Bengals still twice, and that could be a different Bengals team than what we have seen so far this year. And generally their schedule is pretty tough, though, especially down the stretch. Once the Bengals start going, once they get the Bengals, they have the Steelers, Bengals again, Pats, Packers, and Steelers. You're gonna have to beat some playoff teams to make it in.
Yeah, but I think that they're more than capable at this point, and Lamar Jackson has shown that they have been.
Let me give my final verdict. I'm gonna say no, based off of
Okay.
that schedule. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I will say with the schedule pulled up in front of me, especially like it is a tough one, right? Like they play a majority, like it seems like almost majority of the teams that they play left could either be playoff teams or or like are currently seated as playoff teams. So it will be tough, but uh, I'm just gonna bet on Lamar here, right? Like I think that it is also unfortunate that there are just like a plethora of good teams at the very top here, right? Because you like I said earlier, there's probably going to be 3 teams out of the AFC West, right? Which only leaves one more wild card spot if the Ravens aren't to win that division, and then the Bills and the Patriots are dueling out in the AFC. So that was where the last wild card spot would go, like more than likely, right? I don't think that the AFC South is going to have 2 people in it, and it's not going to be anybody in the AFC North that's not the Ravens or the Steelers, unless the Browns can somehow. I'm just counting out the Browns. I'm going to mark off the Browns not a playoff team this year. So it's definitely going to be tough. And I think that the Steelers are definitely the team that they're going to have to overcome at this point. But it's a 2-game difference, and they play each other 2 times in the next couple of weeks. So, and at least towards the end of the season. So I think that it's definitely doable. And at the very least, if they split the Steelers games 1-1, I think the Steelers still have their schedule isn't favorable either. I think that they can find those games somewhere, and if they beat them 2 times, then I think there it is right there. They have the tiebreaker, and right now their records would be the exact same. So,
all right, well, good episode. I think we covered just about everything. Stuff that we missed: Dodgers won the World Series, and Hugh Freeze got fired by Auburn. Probably finally, I guess, at that point you're thinking. So no more golf for him, or maybe even more golf, but not at the same country clubs he's been at before. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This has been the Big Little Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. That's Andrew Greig. We'll see you guys when the college football playoff rankings come out in an hour and a half.